What does this picture look like to you? Is it the side profile of a young woman? Or is it the side profile of an elderly woman? Actually, I drew this picture, which is originally by William Hill. This is a really famous picture, so many of you have seen it before. But if you can only manage to see one of the figures at the moment, I will give you a few seconds now to take the opportunity of finding the other person in the picture by changing your perspective. Has everybody seen both figures by now? This one and this one. Now, let's replace this picture with myself. I started medical school in 2020 when COVID-19 started taking over our lives. Our entrance ceremony was cancelled. Our freshman orientations was held online. All our classes were also held online, and any new connections with my new classmates and teachers happened behind a screen. It was disappointing, but I was still happy to be one step closer to my goal of becoming a doctor. As a fresh medical student, I was only focused on studying hard and becoming a doctor. However, before I knew it, I had lost my life to the goal. I lost my motivation, but there's no going back. Why did I want to become a doctor in the first place? Such questions were on my mind. Looking back, it was probably because it was cool. Of course, I also wanted to save lives with my own hands, but it was difficult not to be attracted to a top-ranked field that's always portrayed as high-achieving in TV dramas and films. Now, I can tell that all I could see was the goal and not the actual process. In the end, with this shallow understanding, I went straight to medical school. This is where I finally saw the reality. With exams each week and study materials that gave me headaches, I ended up only having the capacity to see what was in front of me, with no free time on my hands for my own being. Basically, it was hard work. No wonders, right? With each day, a little voice in my head grew louder. What am I doing this for? This realization that I didn't have a clear intrinsic motivation to become a doctor made me even less motivated to become one, even though I was halfway through. Even with such low motivation to become a doctor, I managed to make it to the middle of my third year. For all of you out there, it's possible. So, what helped me get through these low times and continue with my life as a medical student? It was as simple as broadening my horizons and discovering that other options existed. I was just never well done. When I lost my motivation, it was because half my vision was covered. I could only see one path to the goal, one point of view, one perspective, only one figure and not the other in the picture I had shown you before at the beginning. Once the fog lifted and I realized there wasn't just one path in front of me, but many different pathways I could take along the way, it became clear that I did want to become a doctor. It was my goal. I was able to find myself again. You may be wondering how I was able to broaden my perspective and find a new option that saved me. Well, what happened was that I was exposed to a very different opinion and perspective from a panel speaker at an event. They said, if you feel completely stuck and about to lose your mind, it's okay to not fight the feeling. Walk away from what you're struggling with and let yourself go completely. Free your mind from the clutter of others' opinions and ideas. This was the moment the fog cleared and I realized I had another option, running away. I instantaneously felt so much better. Until that moment, I had suffocated myself by tying myself down to a single path, blind to all the other paths before me. Now, I know that I can't stop and put some distance between myself and reality if I need to. Of course, life goes on. So I continued to do what I had to do, study. What I was doing was the same as before, but I was able to breathe by having another option. It's the so-called safety net concept. Imagine walking a tightrope over a chasm. There's a big difference between having a safety net under the rope and not having one. Without the safety net, all we can focus on is the fear of failure and death. But when you realize there's a safety net below you, it's comforting. I won't die, even if I fall. It's so important to keep an open mind. Thanks to that, I managed to make it through to my third year. I wonder how many of us are actually aware of the many options available to us, even daily. Many of us convince ourselves that we can only choose certain choices in the past, limiting ourselves to a comfortable routine. Do you remember? Until we became aware that both the young and the elderly woman could be seen in the picture, we were not even aware that there were two ways to see it. So, how can we gain a new perspective? Put differently, what's prohibiting us from opening ourselves up to new perspectives and different options? One answer may be the confirmation bias. People tend to unconsciously narrow their perspective and only see things from one point of view for their own benefit. Many are blinded to the fact that their information comes from sources convenient for their argument. This is called confirmation bias. Because of this bias, we are usually unaware of other good opportunities or options in front of us. So let's take an example from everyday life. Have you ever liked someone, but when you started dating them, found out they were different from what you had imagined? And you saw many things that didn't match you. Maybe your friends and family had already warned you, but you couldn't believe them because that person was nice to you. When you are interested in someone, you conveniently are only able to see the parts that you like and become blind to their true nature and what other people think of them. Love is blind, and lovers cannot see the pretty follies that themselves commit, as in Shakespeare's work, The Merchant of Venice. It describes how when people fall in love, they lose all sense of reason and common sense. It's a good example of confirmation bias. This bias is everywhere in our daily lives, even if we are unaware of it. It can limit our exposure to opinions that differ from our own, and usually makes us unaware of other good opportunities or options that are right in front of us. So, what should we do to avoid this? First of all, you have to make an effort to pay attention to other opinions in a different environment from your own. Without this, you will remain stuck in your stereotypes and only look at what is convenient for you, not noticing a better option right in front of you. So, many people are lucky when they realize there is just the right option when they lose their perspective, because they were only looking at what was convenient for them, even though it was originally right in front of them. Entering university has exposed me to many different people, all with different ways of thinking I hadn't been exposed to before. I actively reached out to people I hadn't interacted with before, and I even joined an organization that valued the diversity of backgrounds. All the decisions ultimately led me to the event that opened my eyes. As a result, I was able to get objective advice. Some may say it's luck, but I consider this to have been inevitable rather than being lucky. By joining the organization and the event, I had taken that step forward to avoid my stereotypes and confirmation bias. I had grabbed the opportunity to broaden my perspective. That is why it's so important to put yourself in a different environment and pay attention to new ideas you hadn't been exposed to before without being trapped in confirmation bias. Now that we've discussed what it takes to avoid confirmation bias and accept opinions, let's talk about how to make use of accepted opinions. Note that the premise is accepting and agreeing are not the same. The process involves first accepting and then comparing other options. Accepting opinions does not necessarily mean agreeing with it. Agreeing or not agreeing is the final conclusion. You compare how the received opinion works and how it affects you with the original idea, and then choose better path. That is the objective. If the advice you get was not right for you, the outcome would naturally be worse. In some sports, in company management, in the way you study at school, this is not limited to anything, is it? Everyone experiences this in their daily life. However, sometimes a narrow perspective causes people to stick to their own opinions without utilizing them, even if they accept the opinions of those around them. By utilizing opinions from an objective point of view and looking at and comparing other options, you can be convinced that the path you're currently on is the right one, or you can find an even better path. Not everyone will necessarily achieve this, but it's an opportunity to look objectively at the path you're currently on, which you are not able to see clearly because your perspective is usually narrowed. Whichever way you turn, you're sure to find the best option for yourself. So now, let's take another look at the picture from the start. As I have told you, I'm a medical student, but lost my motivation to become a doctor. At that time, one event made me realize other options I had never seen. The option of distancing myself from medicine for a time. Even though there have been other paths before me, I'm sure that there were paths that I couldn't choose because my perspective is usually narrowed. But I'm pretty sure that if you change your perspective, you will come to a different conclusion about what you take for granted now. So this time, replace this picture with yourself. Thank you.